Yo, what's up everybody? William Johnson here, and today we've got a crazy head-scratching mystery that'll make you question everything. So grab some popcorn, because this one is wild. Alright, buckle up, because we're about to dive deep into the bizarre case of Maureen Kelly, a 19-year-old woman who took off on what she thought would be a spiritual journey, but ended up vanishing without a trace, leaving behind nothing but confusion and a whole lot of questions. Let's rewind to the summer of 2013. Maureen and her friends are chilling at the Canyon Creek Campground near Cougar, Washington. Sounds like the perfect summer spot, right? A little hiking, some campfire stories, maybe a marshmallow or two. But around 5 p.m., Maureen tells her friend she's going on a spiritual quest. But not the kind where you find yourself in a yoga class. No, she decides to strip off all of her clothes and head into the wilderness, promising she'd be back by midnight. I mean, who does that, right? And get this, midnight comes, but Maureen's nowhere to be found. Her friends are freaking out, and the next morning they file a missing persons report. But when investigators get involved, they quickly realize this case isn't your average lost in the woods situation. Oh no, it's way more twisted than that. They've got no clues, no leads, and it's starting to look like something straight out of one of those creepy documentaries that makes you stay up way too late watching stuff you didn't sign up for. So now the big question, what happened to Maureen? Was it just a case of someone getting lost in the forest? Or is there something more sinister at play? Could this be a case of foul play, or even self-harm? Or, and here's where it gets really spooky, could this be another freaky chapter in the unsettling phenomenon known as Missing 411, where people just disappear without a trace, like they were swallowed up by the earth itself? Stick with me, because this mystery is about to take a turn you won't see coming. Let's dive into it. Being out in nature while camping or hiking can be a very rewarding and relaxing experience, though most of us know that it can also be very dangerous since there are wild animals to consider, temperatures could suddenly drop very drastically, or you could get lost, which obviously means that it is vital to be as prepared as you possibly can be. But not every excursion into the wild is planned ahead of time. It's good to be a little spontaneous, but even then, there's a need to keep your wits about you to ensure that you can make your way out of the woods and return home safely. But sometimes, even the most prepared people on the planet can still be bested by unforeseen circumstances, and Maureen Kelly is certainly no exception. In 2013, Maureen Kelly, known to her friends and family as Anu, was just 19 years old. She had been born and raised in Vancouver, Washington in September of 1993 and was raised alone by her mother. Most of Anu's early life is largely a mystery. Her family has been pretty tight-lipped about her upbringing, and all we know for certain is that Anu was of Pacific Islander descent. As Anu grew older, she eventually began attending Lewis and Clark High School in Spokane, Washington. This was a school steeped in history, having first opened its doors way back in the late 1800s. For Anu, it was a great place to be. She seems to have made many friends here, and all things considered, it seems like a great place to have grown up. Her hometown of Vancouver, on the other hand, couldn't be more different. According to Neighborhood Scout and city data, Vancouver is in the top 10% of the most unsafe areas in the entire country. So to say that Anu grew up surrounded by crime would be an incredible understatement. I'm sure this played a part in Anu's personality and lifestyle choices. Despite being surrounded by the worst of the worst, Anu was an incredibly spiritual person. She loved to stay in touch with nature and embraced the more natural aspects of humanity. Anu felt that the moment we are born, we're about as connected with the planet and Mother Nature as we'll ever be. In her eyes, as we grow up, our connection with the world around us begins to fade as we become influenced by outside factors, many of which are less than ideal. When Anu wasn't out hiking or generally being the respectful, carefree person she was known for being, she could be found singing or playing the ukulele. She loved to post photos and videos of herself online, enjoying music and the outdoors. She even had her own YouTube channel where she would post about many of her interests, predominantly her music. It was the 7th of June 2013 when Anu created a post on her Facebook account in which she asked whether any of her friends who had a vehicle were available to go camping on the update. Anu had made plans to take herself and a few of her friends on what she described as a spiritual quest. But unbeknownst to her loved ones, this quest would be Anu's last. The camping trip, some sources state that Anu contacted her half-sister, Sherry, to ask if she could borrow some of her camping gear, but it isn't known whether she ever collected any of that gear or if she had any of it with her while she was camping and getting ready for her spiritual journey. We don't know much about the specifics of Anu's spirituality or her spiritual quest, but it goes without saying that she wanted to do everything she could to stay in touch with Mother Nature, and this journey was going to expedite that process. Cherry would later report that during the phone call with Anu, she seemed very excited about the prospect of going camping, and that she just seemed like her normal self, happy-go-lucky and full of life. With a ride sorted out and a group of friends to accompany her, Anu set out to campsite number 3 at the Canyon Creek Campground, which is situated in the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest, just 2 days later on Sunday the 9th of June. The site is known to be surrounded by dense foliage and tall trees, and hence it is tent-friendly only. It's the perfect place for a remote escape, far away from the hustle and bustle of everyday life, especially considering it's darn near impossible to bring an RV or anything or the sort into this area. Many people who have visited the campsite describe the surrounding areas as hard to traverse since there is a steep slope leading from the campground into the dense national forest beyond, which encompasses an area of over 1.32 million acres. This forest is incredibly large. When the group arrived at the campsite, the weather was mild at a pleasant 70 degrees. There was no threat of rain, and it all seemed very idyllic for an afternoon of camping. There is no indication whether the group of friends had anything to eat or drink while they were out there that afternoon, but one would assume that they made a fire at some point, since it would soon begin to cool down. There has been a lot of speculation about whether the group took part in any alcohol or anything else while out in the woods. Many people claim that this may have been what led to the terrible series of events that is to follow, but the reality is that this information simply isn't available. No one from the group has spoken up about this, so I can't really say anything with certainty. Regardless of this, everything seemed to go exactly as planned that afternoon until around 5 o'clock, when Anu suddenly announced to the group that it was time for her to set out on the spiritual quest that she had been planning for so long. As she proclaimed that the time had come, she caught everyone off guard when, without warning, she stripped all of her clothes off, including her shoes. She acted like this was no big deal, but her friends were all shocked, to say the least. Immediately after doing so, she grabbed a fanny pack that contained a compass, a small knife, and a pack of matches. She then turned away and wandered off into the woods, telling her friends that she planned to be back by midnight. Many people have questioned why Anu's friends didn't stop her from going into the woods by herself, especially since she was incredibly underprepared, but according to Sheriff David Cox, her friends felt that this was something that she needed to do since she had been talking about it for a very long time. I wish we knew more about her mental state at this time, as well as the specifica of her spirituality, because it could help to shed a lot of light on this case. But unfortunately, that information just isn't available. One thing is clear though, for Anu, this trip wasn't something she suddenly decided she wanted to do. In her mind, this was something she needed to do. As Anu stepped away from her group of friends, she showed them one finally glimpse of her smile before walking off into the woods, never to be seen alive again. The term missing 411 refers to individuals who have gone missing under bizarre circumstances inside of a national park. Unfortunately, Anu's case is the very definition of bizarre. Anu's friends waited patiently for her to return as promised, but when temperatures started to drop into the 40s accompanied by light rain, they became concerned since she wasn't wearing any clothing and would be left at the mercy of the elements if she didn't make it back to the campsite soon. She did have matches with her, so she would have been able to start a fire, but if the rain got worse, that fire would be useless. When midnight came and went without any sign of Anu, her friends felt that something had to be done, and they contacted the Skamania County Sheriff's Office to report Anu as a missing person. A search party was quickly organized, and as soon as it started, detectives felt that there was a good chance that she would be found, since they very quickly discovered bare footprints not far from the campsite that were estimated to be the same size as Anu's feet. The footprints led them to Canyon Creek, which isn't far from the campground, and it was determined that she crossed the creek seemingly without any problems. Many people have, though, expressed their astonishment at the fact that she made it that far, since going from the campsite to the creek is very steep, and it would not have been easy to traverse the terrain, especially while not wearing any shoes. Just as astounding was the fact that she then seemingly climbed up the other side of the canyon, which is also very steep, and she seemed to have made it to Forest Road 54, but unfortunately this is where searchers were unable to find any more footprints, and so they had no idea in which direction Anu would have walked. It was as if she approached the road, then vanished. There were no signs of a struggle, no clues or evidence, nothing. It was genuinely like she just blipped out of existence. The decision was made to bring in search dogs from a non-promising company called Pacific Crest Search Dogs to aid in the search, but they were unable to pick up a new scent. At one point, searchers considered calling in helicopters to help search from the air. But it was the following day at this point, and a thick cloud cover had formed which made this mission impossible. Unwilling to give up, searchers continued scouring the area for the rest of the day, but were unable to find any trace of Anu, and they had no choice but to suspend the search when it started getting dark, as their efforts would have now put even more lives in danger. They resumed the search the following morning, but again, they were unable to uncover even a single clue as to which direction Anu traveled, and her family and friends started to fear the worst. One exciting thing about she'd now been nude in the wilderness for multiple days, temperatures had dropped multiple times, rain and mud now covered the terrain, and the conditions were dire, to put it mildly. But what's incredibly odd is that search efforts were called off after just 2 days, which is a very short time in a missing person investigation. Oftentimes, rescue personnel will search for clues for weeks, even months. But in Anu's case, this simply didn't happen. It isn't clear why this was done, since the forest is massive, and Anu could have walked in any direction that had not been searched yet. This decision, admittedly, seems incredibly irresponsible, but I feel like we have to assume that the sheriff's office had their reasons. Anu's family and friends then launched an urgent appeal in which they spoke to the media, begging for searchers to continue their efforts. The forest showed up. This had the desired effect, and the search was indeed resumed that same week, but Many people who followed the case still wonder why the decision was made to suspend the search in the first place, since no explanation was ever given. This wasted large amounts of crucial time. Considering Anu had no food, no water, no hope of shelter, it just boggles my mind how they could have tried to give up after less than 48 hours. One thing that's interesting about the search is that some of the searchers stated that the brush was so thick that they could probably walk right up to someone who was lying on the ground and never even notice them. They feared that the chances of finding Anu after she had been out in the elements for nearly a week were now slim to none. This is a very, very old-growth forest, so it makes sense that the undergrowth would be quite substantial. Anu and her friends waited day after day, hoping, praying, begging that they would receive some sort of news. As fate would have it, they received news just 6 days later, but it wasn't what they had hoped for. The end of the line. At 6 p.m. on the 15th of June, all right, picture this. Just 6 days after Anu mysteriously vanished, her friends and family were hit with some devastating news. The search for Anu was officially called off. Not a single trace of her was found. I mean, think about it. 6 days, no leads, nothing. You'd think by then something would have popped up, right? But no. The authorities had pretty much given up, citing the high likelihood that Anu had succumbed to hypothermia because of those freezing, chilling nighttime temperatures. It was the kind of cold that would make a polar bear shiver. So they just decided, that's it, we're calling it. Anu was presumed dead, and they wrapped it up. But here's where it gets seriously creepy. No trace of Anu has ever been found. Not a single thing. Even after all these years, it's been almost 11 years since she disappeared into the wild. And to this day, no one knows what happened to her, where she went, or if she was even trying to make her way back to the campsite when she vanished. It's like she just vanished, gone, poof. Now, of course, with any unsolved disappearance, the rumor mill starts turning and people start throwing around their own theories. Some of these ideas are way out there, but others, you're gonna wanna hear these because they're much more plausible than you might think. Now, this isn't one of those wild alien abduction type missing 411 cases. Nah, this one feels more like it could happen to anyone. The most common theory, Anu got lost. She was out in the forest, totally unprepared, no clothes, no food, nothing to keep her warm. It's not hard to imagine her just trying to bunker down for the night, thinking she could survive until morning. Great idea under normal circumstances, except the temperatures dropped and there was rain. We're talking about freezing cold. And so yeah, a lot of people think she probably succumbed to hypothermia in her sleep. And that's the theory that's easy to buy into. But here's where it gets creepy though. What if Anu was taken? See, the search dogs stopped picking up her scent at this one spot, Forest Road 54. That's the point where everything just stopped. She left a trail of footprints up to that road. But once she reached it, there were no more tracks, no more scent. Weird, right? Like super weird. Now, here's the kicker. Forest Road 54 is a well-maintained asphalt road. So people started wondering, did Anu cross the road? Some say she didn't. Maybe she stayed on the same side, or maybe she walked along the road to a different part of the woods. But here's the real theory that's got a lot of people talking. What if someone picked her up on the road? Imagine this, you're in a super dangerous area, crime-ridden, sketchy as all hell, and then out of nowhere, you see a naked 19-year-old walking along the road. Yeah, I'm thinking that's an opportunity someone might just not pass up. That theory makes a lot of sense to me, but then there's another kind of out there theory. What if Anu planned this whole thing? What if she wanted to disappear? Maybe she'd arranged to meet someone and just wanted to leave her old life behind. Now, this theory sounds crazy, right? I mean, no one close to Anu believed she was trying to run away. She didn't have any reason to just drop everything and vanish, but hey, I guess it's always a possibility, even if it's slim. Then there's the theory that I think most people believe she reached that road at the worst possible time, and maybe that's when someone took her against her will. But I gotta be honest with you, this theory's had some criticism. It's a bit sensational, right? And the investigators are pretty adamant they don't suspect foul play. Still, that sudden stop in her scent, that's gotta make you pause, right? Why didn't the dogs find anything? The fact that her scent just stopped makes this whole thing super suspicious. And some people still aren't convinced she's dead. A friend of hers, Yasmin, has said there's always the possibility that Anu just wandered off, never intending to come back. She may not have wanted to be found. Which, when you think about it, doesn't sound totally impossible. Finally, there's one last theory to toss into the mix. Did Anu take any drugs or alcohol before heading out on her quest? Well, Sheriff Cox did an interview and said there was no indication she took anything. So maybe she was just super excited to be out in nature and the cold and wet weather just got the best of her. Whatever the case may be, Anu's disappearance has never been solved, and it doesn't look like her family or friends are going to get the answers they've been searching for. So, if you have any info, you know the drill. Reach out to the Skamania County Sheriff's Office at 509. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of True Crime Stories. If you like this video, check out the other cases I've covered, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It's totally free, and you'll stay up to date with all my future videos. Also, hit that join button below to support the channel and get early access to new content, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.